Welcome to Stubbs with Jason. S-T-U-B-S spells Stubbs. S-T-U-B-S spells Stubbs. Stubbs. Hey people, welcome to Stubbs with Jason, where I review and discuss movies, music, TV, really anything that catches my attention for more than 10 minutes. Why Stubbs? It's easy. Ticket stubs. I've got a binder full of these ticket stubs that I've kept going back to 2005 or so. I had a bunch of them prior to that. I got rid of them at some point thinking I was making things easier. Hindsight says I probably purged the wrong thing. Anyway, I've been doing casual reviews on Facebook for years and tend to get a decent amount of engagement and positive feedback and lots of encouragement to jump into something like this, like to try a podcast or something. So I decided I was ready to see what this is, what it's like, and taking this to another level. So let's go. Kicking things off with what I saw, I went to see the new movie Civil War, directed by Alex Garland. His recent works include Annihilation, Men, and Ex Machina, which honestly is the movie where he really hooked me. And when I saw this movie's trailer, I got pretty excited. Going in, I was expecting a lot of meat to chew on. Dropping this movie in the year of the first presidential election post-January 6th seems like you'd have something to say. Unfortunately, we're presented with what I'd say is a mostly toothless story that provides only the slightest feelings of tension and conflict. I've heard people say in their reviews, sometimes you might find yourself holding things against a movie because it wasn't what you thought it would be, and that you should enter every movie open to whatever story the filmmaker has prepared for you. And I think there's merit to that. And honestly, I really try to only watch the first trailer for most movies that are released that I'm interested in seeing. As you guys might know, the second and third trailers for a movie almost always give away too much. And because of that extra info, sometimes I'd find myself like trying to piece together a movie before I even see it, falling in love with my theories going in, and then as I'd go to watch a movie, I'd be like, well, hopefully the filmmakers can like meet or surpass what I've thought of. And sometimes you just feel a lot of disappointment, because again, you just fall in love with your own theories. So I totally get that. So with this movie, I only watched the first trailer, and essentially it's just kind of it just shows, modern Civil War. That's pretty much what it's presented as. And I was 100% in on what that was selling at that point. And I just wanted to preface the rest of this review with that in mind. That essentially, I went into this movie kind of expecting one thing, and I feel like it was not what I was expecting. So, look, there's definitely a modern age U.S. Civil War present in this movie. Why it's being fought, how the lines and sides were drawn, who ended up with military resources, and how did the chain of command let this happen, who's leading all these groups, all of the things that seem like they'd be important, like the foundation of a movie about any war, are absolutely absent here, at least in a direct narrative sense. Maybe it's shame on me for thinking those things are important in a movie called Civil War, but I feel like you just gotta name this movie something else if you aren't gonna cover these things. Alright, so let's talk about the movie that I watched and not the movie that I thought I was going to watch. In a nutshell, this is a story about a small group of wartime photographers covering this war. They embark on a bit of a journey in hopes of capturing what they feel might be a historical image or story. And without getting into spoilers or anything like that, that's pretty much it. They have a goal in mind, they have to cross dangerous terrain due to the ongoing war, and we follow them on that journey. Kirsten Dunst is the main character. Her name is Lee. She's a wartime photographer. She's partner named Joel. He's played by a guy named Wagner Moura. They're joined by a younger woman named Jessie, played by Kaylee Spaney, and an older guy named Sammy is played by Stephen McKinley Henderson. Aside from this group, you've got Nick Offerman, who plays POTUS, and Jesse Plemons, who is forever Todd from Breaking Bad in my mind, plays pretty much Todd from Breaking Bad. Maybe a little smarter and a little more deliberate in his awfulness. I think the cast is actually really great. They all nail their roles. I don't think there's anything particularly unique about the story that they're asked to tell, but as far as they're concerned, they're solid. So I think casting and acting is really good. I think you definitely understand the risk that these characters are taking by being in this line of work. That said, overall, visually, there's nothing too fancy going on here. Because of that, there's nothing particularly impressive with the sound that's going on. And there's nothing offensive. I just feel like in a week or two, I'll have a hard time remembering what this movie looked like, or sounded like. There are some highlights, though, where the movie highlights some of the photographs that the photographers are taking during these skirmishes, or maybe encounter is a better, more appropriate term for these different set pieces, more or less, that they're moving through. Considering this movie, I think, essentially boils down to the ethics of war journalism, I think they do a good job of showing the cost and collateral damage occurring and the toll it takes on these people to provide us a view of the truth, when we're safe at home in our couches or, behind our keyboards, I don't think this is necessarily trying to glorify these people or convey them as martyrs or anything like that. I think it's just saying, hey, not everyone can do this. And even if you do think you can, even if you would think you're a person who could do this, there's a cost and it takes a toll, Overall, as far as the story they decide to tell, I don't think it's bad. It just seems like they could have used any war or conflict as the backdrop. And by the time they decide to set out on this journey that you're with them on, you're probably already drawing conclusions on where all of these characters are going to end up. And unfortunately for you, you're probably right. At the end, essentially, it's pretty predictable. There's moments of tension that are well executed. I'm not sure they ever feel like they carry any weight. There's a standout encounter that's on the back half of the movie, and essentially you finally get like the slightest subtext of how people would act in these times. But again, I just feel like the movie isn't bold enough to really say what it needs to say in this moment. So overall, for me, I think this movie is going to land at a 5 out of 10. It's not bad. Like I said, the cast is really good. The story it tells is fine. It looks and sounds fine. For me, I can't get past this amazing concept, this amazing tapestry of a modern Civil War that you're putting out there in the trailers and you're putting out there in the marketing and you're advertising this as. Again, not to say that isn't present in the movie. It is present in the movie. It's just not what the movie is about. We're in one of the most tumultuous times in our nation's history, and it just boggles my mind that you ignore all the interesting elements that would put us in a civil war and relegate them to the sideline, or for a few throwaway lines of dialogue and like an image of a map of the U.S. that shows various factions, but don't give us any context on how those factions came to be, or who they are, or what they stand for. With that 5 out of 10, you might, movie it was rated R for military violence and language. Look, I took my 14-year-old son. I don't think he was necessarily alarmed at anything he saw. In some parents' eyes, I'm probably very liberal as far as what I let my kids watch. In other people's eyes, not so much. This is different in every household and with every kid. You got to make that choice for yourself, essentially. Nothing any worse than any standard war movie that you see, as far as military violence. In my mind, things like American Sniper are much harsher. There's harsher things out there than this movie, essentially. I think 13 and fine is up. But, with that said, my 14-year-old was like, well, that wasn't what I thought it would be, but it was fine. I'll probably never watch it again, you know. So that said, there's nothing that really warrants a theatrical viewing in this. Nothing visual, nothing with the sound that really popped out. I went to an ultra screen, you know, here in Pickerington. You know, I would say this is a perfectly streamable movie, not a can't miss streamable movie. Like, if you see it on there and you're just like, yeah, let's check this out. It's perfect for that, you know. Overall, would I recommend it? Sure. But if you asked me about this movie, I would definitely ask you what you think it's going to be about. I think if you go in completely blind, like if all you have is a title and no trailers, I think you're going to enjoy it a little more than I did. But I also think, having heard this, being aware that it's not going to be that movie, you might get to look at it with a little easier perspective. I don't know what the reviews are like out there. I think the only review I saw was pretty positive and fairly, warm to it. Which, again, I get. Like, the base story here isn't bad. It's fine. It's just not what I was looking for. So with that said, 5 out of 10. I'm going to share this podcast on my Facebook page. If you gave this a listen, comment and let me know what you thought of it. I haven't quite decided on what I'm going to do in terms of creating socials for this thing or getting it out on all the different platforms. I got a lot to figure out still, but I've got to start somewhere, and this is where I figured I'm going to start. I'm sure everything will evolve as I move forward, assuming anybody thinks that this thing is worthwhile, or hopefully as long as I keep having fun doing it. That said, there's a few movies coming out next week I'm interested in, and I keep hearing really good things about The First Omen. So I don't know what I'll be reviewing next or when it'll be going up at the moment. I guess we'll all just find that out together. I'm going to pass on a spoiler section this time. Honestly, guys, I'm dealing with some kind of lung infection or something's going on. There's a bunch of takes here where I am coughing up just a wicked storm occasionally, once every few moments. I don't know. It just kind of comes and goes. Anyway, I do thank you all for tuning in if you are listening. I'm really looking forward to see what this turns into, and for all of you who have encouraged me to do this, hopefully you listened, hopefully you enjoyed, hopefully we have fun together. I'm looking forward to doing this. So, for now, I'm out. Enjoy that song one more time. Stubs.